Dear students, we have reached our final chapter of our journey together. And in this chapter we discuss both retirement planning and estate planning. We've done a little bit of retirement planning throughout the semester in bits and pieces, but now we're going to concentrate on it in this presentation. Then we will discuss estate planning, the final chapter of life. And in between we'll have a little discussion of what's going on right now with the baby boom generation. But let's get started on slide number 1. By 2030, 76 million baby boomers will have retired. Yeah. But only 46 million Gen Xers will have come up to replace them. What's going on? We'll discuss that in our next presentation. But first, let's take a look at an oft-heard lament of senior citizens. If I knew I was going to live this long, I would have done things a whole lot differently. So we're shouting at you, young folks, from across the generational divide. Yes, we are. You know what I'm going to tell you eventually, right? Get started now. But anyway, let's divert to slide number 2. Why should you think about retirement planning now? Well, because people are spending more years, 16 to 20. Sound like a test question. How many years in retirement? 16 to 20. Yeah, see, it used to be people retired at 62 and died at 64. Or they didn't make it to 65 when they planned to retire. But now people are living far longer. It's a great problem to have. It creates its own problems, but it's still a very great problem to have. A private pension and Social Security are most often insufficient to cover the cost of living. What private pension plan? They are all disappearing and being replaced by individual defined contribution plans. What are they? Relax. We'll discuss it in just a moment. Inflation will diminish the purchasing power of your retirement savings. If inflation stays around 3% or so, it's been a little less than that for quite a few years, but over the long haul, it's about 3%. That means prices are going to double in about 24 years. Remember, 72 divided by 3. So by the time you're ready to check out, everything will cost twice what it did when you started your retirement. Slide number 3. How do you estimate your living expenses? Well, spending patterns will change. Some expenses may go down, some will stop. Anything related to the work expenses and clothing, and hopefully you've paid down your mortgage if you have one. Income taxes should go down, but other expenses will probably go up. Medical, leisure, gifts, and contributions. In some cultures of some families, the cultures of some families, it's just expected that the grandparents are going to donate to the grandchildren. Oh, they have to go to a private school. Oh, well. Did we say inflation will raise the amount you need to cover your expenses over your probable 16 to 20 or more years in retirement? Right. The tricky wild card, in my humble opinion, is healthcare. It's the only thing that really scares me with respect to my life and my retirement. Because, you follow all the things that we do in BUS121. You pay down debts and invest wisely, save, and then some major healthcare thing happens and your insurance says, yeah, forget it, we're not going to touch you. And then you're wiped out. Yeah. Slide number 4. This is how the average, whatever that is, older household spends its money. And this is according to the Labor Bureau statistics. And it's kind of hard to get a handle around their numbers because they chop it up into little bitty pieces, different 55 to 60, 65 to 60 to 65, a 65 to 70. So I just took 65. And you see that housing is a major expense. Well, if you've purchased a home, paid down your mortgage, my hope is that that will go down and not continue to rise with as rents rise. But you know, there are some senior housing options available. But if you want to continue to live in Southern California, San Diego, you know rent's just going to keep going up because it's... Have you ever lived in Buffalo or Youngstown, Ohio? The weather here, we are weather snobs. But look at transportation. And I think, once again, this is probably should go down with the advent of driverless cars and the ability to just call up a vehicle when you need one and take you to where you want to go and drop you off, and then it'll work on somebody else. So the price of transportation should come down. Here's the one that I have a hard time believing. Healthcare. I think that's going to be higher in the coming years, but we'll see. So, food at 13%. People do. I do worry about the price of food because it certainly seems to be a huge expense. But when you put it in the grand scheme of things, it's really not as much as we feel. We just go to the store and oh my goodness, what are they asking for that? But again, remember the cost of convenience. If you just prepare your own foods, you're going to save a whole lot of money. Slide number 5. Planning your retirement housing. Consider the cost of living and taxes. But here we are in San Diego. What are you going to do? Most people prefer to stay in their homes because after 30 years, 20 years, whatever, it's not a house anymore. It's your home. And the statistic, which really hasn't changed, it changes that 6 out of 7 people will remain in their homes. Why are the retirement homes and the nursing homes and the continuing care communities bursting at the seams? Just because there are so many more baby boomers. But there's still about 6 out of the 7 who decide to remain in their homes. And we discussed that reverse mortgage where you're able to literally draw money out of your house by literally adding a loan onto your house. And then the cool thing about it, the one major benefit is that they cannot foreclose. But be very careful because as we mentioned in the past, there are sharks in the water who love to take advantage of the elderly. So be careful. Get a very good lawyer or other real estate professional that knows loans and to read over it and make sure there's no gotchas in there. Now, some people will decide to relocate. They decide, look, San Diego is just too darn expensive. I'm going to go someplace with a lower cost of living, fewer taxes. But then they decide, you know what? I think I'm going to come back to San Diego. It's not such a bad place. Oh boy, yeah, if you sold the house or condo or whatever, it's going to be really tough to come back, isn't it? So what I recommend to people is rent for a year or two. Rent where you're going to live and then rent out your place here. Make sure you get a good property manager because you won't be in the neighborhood. And then after a year or two, if you're really happy where you move to Port Washington, up on the Olympic Peninsula, or out in Arizona and Sun City, Tucson, Green Valley, sure, then it's time to sell the place or just, keep it for the rent. But at least you'll be able to move back in case you wanted to move back to San Diego, to our weather snobs. Now, more and more Americans are retiring abroad. Yeah, Costa Rica, anyone? The Philippines, Baguio, Ecuador, Cuenca it's called? Yeah, Cuenca. And people think that if you leave the country, you don't have to pay your federal income taxes. Wrong. No, you still have to pay your federal income taxes. You don't pay California taxes anymore because you're not a resident in California. But healthcare is an issue. And if you either don't sign up or cancel your Medicare and then decide, you know what, I think I need to go back to the States for medical for services, you're going to find that the Medicare is going to say, well, you got to pay us for all the years that you disappeared, because we're not going to play that game. Because often the dynamic is the person moves to another area, which is a whole lot cheaper, out of the country, and then their health is failing, so they move back to the States. They want to get the good health care. And the Medicare says, no, that's not right. So you're going to have to pony up, dear students. Slide number 6, planning your retirement income. Let's talk about social insecurity. Social Security. Oh boy, Social Security has just been lambasted upside down, left side, right. If you ask younger folks about their probability of seeing a Social Security check, they will tell you that they have a bigger probability, they believe they have a larger probability of seeing a UFO, alien spaceship, in their lifetime. And there are problems with Social Security, but nowhere near as much as people make it out to be. It has been a very successful program. Now, here's the one problem with it. It was never meant to be your sole source of retirement income. When it was designed back in the late 1930s, it was meant to supplement your retirement income. So maybe a better name would have been supplemental security or something along those lines, because somewhere along the line, people got it in their heads that, oh, Social Security will pay for Wrong. Wrong. It is not true. So it even though it's been a very successful program, people believe that it's the only thing they have to worry about, and that's not true. You have to do your own savings to prepare your own preparation. Once you turn, I think, 60, they start sending you the earnings and benefits statement. But you can request it at any time. The full retirement benefits range from 65 to 67, depending on the year we were born. You will see next, I think that's next slide. But what you'll hear people saying is that Social Security is going broke. No, Social Security is not going broke. Medicare is going broke, and it's not because of the Medicare program, it's just because healthcare is bankrupting us. But Social Security, if nothing changes, and that's what we'll discuss in our next presentation on the baby boom generation, it's going to wind up paying, or being only able to pay 70 to 75% of what has been promised, which is not good, but it's not going broke. And so there are things that we're going to be able to do, assuming we can stop yelling at one another and work on the problem, that will shore up Social Security, and at the same time, hopefully educate people that don't depend on Social Security alone. Okay? All right. Here are the full benefits years. Notice that it started with 65 if you were born before 1938, and then up until 1960, it moved to 67 years. So depending what year you're born, and most of you watching this, listening to this, were born after 1960. So 67 years. So let's see. People are now living, 15 years longer, 17 years longer than they did back in the 1930s. But Social Security has only gone up 2 years in that time. We'll come back to that later. Slide 8. What about your employer? Well, the old, what is called defined benefit plan. Now, you hear people call it a pension or a traditional pension, but the legal term is a defined benefit plan. These are disappearing. The idea was you'd work for a company for a number of years, and they would then say, great, we're going to pay you a certain amount of money depending on how much you made, how many years you worked here, and your age when you retired. And we'll pay you that for the rest of your life. Right. And this is when these were designed when people just didn't live that long. So the companies and the municipalities and the federal government are saying, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. And when I started teaching 1 million years ago, I took a 20% pay cut to leave the industry. So I didn't think I was going to be teaching very long. It was a temporary full-time position just for 1 semester. And I figured, what are they going to do, fire me? But they gave me all this materials. I'm looking at this pension plan, and I'm thinking, this is pretty good. You're not a part of Social Security. You're part of the California State Teachers Retirement System, CalSTRS. And this is pretty darn good. So, hey. And plus, I just absolutely adored teaching. I just fell in love with it. The students, with making their little minds work differently and challenging them. And I reapplied, and I've been here for about 1 million years or so. So thank you very much, Southwestern College. Thank you very much, CalSTRS. But in the defined benefit plans, the employer makes the investment decisions for your and their contributions, because sometimes you pay into it, we pay into it. We pay now a little over 10%, and then the employer pays into it too. But your benefit amount stays the same regardless of how the investments perform, unless the fund goes belly up, which is what started happening in the 1980s and 90s when companies were raiding their defined benefit plans and then declaring bankruptcy. Would anybody do that to their employees? Oh, yeah. Social Security is an example of a defined benefit plan. So these are disappearing. Why? Because we're living longer. Again, it's a great problem to have. Plus, people just don't work 30 or 40 years for one company anymore. So what are we replacing these with? Slide number 9. Defined contribution plans. And again, that's the legal term, but most people don't use that term. We call them 401k plans, profit-sharing plans, employer-sponsored plans. The retirement plan now, instead of being tied to the employer, is now tied to you. So the cool thing is when you move, if you move to another company, you can take it with you, which actually makes a lot more sense because of especially the way the economy changes and the jobs change all the time and the companies morph and the like. So there are various plans, but by far the most popular one is the 401k. And the 403b, which is its public employees counterpart. It's a dumb name, 401k. Where does it come from? It comes from the Internal Revenue Code. And in Section 401k, it outlines the provisions that if your employer does this, and you do this, and Domini, 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 Sanctus, Sanctus, Spiritus, the IRS doesn't tax you until you're in retirement. And they're very, very cool, folks. But we go to the IRS and we say, can you come up with a better name than 401k plan? And they say, oh, yes, we like to call them salary reduction plans. Right, that's what I want. I want my salary reduced. Why don't they call it the most fantastic, fantabulous, awesome retirement plan you could ever happen? Because the truth is, dear students, if you start early, as we discussed way back in Chapter 1, you invest, you contribute prudently, consistently, with an eye toward long-term growth, and don't get greedy when the markets roar, and don't panic when the markets fall, your retirement could be very, very comfortable. You have the opportunity to do better than any of these previous defined benefit plans did. But at the same time, if you don't contribute, if you don't invest wisely, if you chase after the next big thing every time the markets roar ahead and you panic and run when the markets fall, you're not going to have that comfortable a retirement. So there are opportunities here, but there are also dangers and pitfalls. We will discuss the match. They give you free money. And we also discuss the Roth, as it's called, option in detail later. Slide number 10. Estimating your income and your expenses can be done using these retirement calculators. Now, every company has one. I think these are two of the better ones, American Funds and T. Rowe Price, but Vanguard and the banks have them and the insurance companies have them. And basically what they are marketing tools, because that you put in what you're making, how much you're saving, what you expect how old you expect to live and when you expect to retire, and it comes back and says, oh, you need to save more. Here, talk to one of our representatives. But they're useful. And the tricky question is, how long am I going to live? If you knew, then you could plan it more accordingly, right? And run up a bunch of credit cards before you kick out. But you don't. And so we discussed the longevity calculator, play the longevity game back in chapter 10. Remember that it still uses Flash, so you might have to tell your browser that, yes, it's okay for these people to use Flash. And then, as we said, Social Security will send you an estimated benefits upon request, or just wait until you're 60 and they'll start sending them automatically. But just go to their website and ask for one. And these tools, they're useful, but again, how long are we going to live? We don't know. That's the issue. Look at your family, look at your lifestyle, and then know that tomorrow it could be your last day. Or you might live to over 100. And you younger folks, if trends continue, 100 is going to be very, very doable for most of you. Which is why you should start saving. And keep exercising, and don't smoke. Yes, mother. Yes, mother. Yes, get plenty of rest. Slide number 11. Let's now focus on the different types of retirement accounts, because there are many. They're all basically cousins and sisters and siblings and brothers of one another. They all work basically one of two different ways. They are either pre-tax, sometimes called before tax, or they are post-tax, sometimes called after tax. And the idea is you get a tax break now with the pre-tax, or you get a tax break later with the post-tax contributions. And there are, pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages of each, as we will discuss. But for the pre-tax contributions, those are the 401ks, the 403bs, the 457s, the 401as. Most people are going to have a 401k through their private employer. The federal employees, military included, have what's called the Thrift Savings Plan. It's a 401k plan, but it has its own section of the Internal Revenue Code. The traditional IRA used to just be called the IRA, but now called the traditional, to differentiate it from the Roth IRA, is for everyone. Anyone who earns income can have a traditional IRA. Now, there's some confusion that we'll discuss in a bit, and that you'll probably forget all about until it affects you, and then you'll have to bone up or have somebody explain it to you. But everybody who earns income can have a traditional IRA. Then for smaller companies and self-employed, there are a couple of sisters and brothers of the IRA, different variations. The SEP, the Simple IRA, and the KEO, which is kind of not that popular anymore, but I just love that name, KEO. It reminds me of the Wizard of Oz. And I know you might be thinking, huh? Remember near the end when the guards are in the witch's castle and they're going, yo, yo. I know. It's very, very disturbing where my mind goes sometimes when it is allowed to wander on its own. But all these share the same common aspect, that you get a tax break now, and later on you pay taxes in retirement. But along around 1998 or so, a new form of retirement came about called the Roth IRA. And it's named after a gentleman, William Roth, who was a senator at the time, who didn't like his retirement plan. He was not too happy with the way it worked out, so he wanted to offer people something different. And so they named it after him, the Roth IRA. And then we put in quotes the Roth 401k, the Roth 403b, because that's not their legal terms, but that's what everyone calls them. The IRS just calls them a 401k with after-tax, post-tax contributions. You don't get a tax break now, but you get a tax break later. In fact, if everything goes according to plan, your retirement income will be tax-free. Pretty cool, as we'll see. Slide number 12. Here is a slide that we took a quick look at in Chapter 11, and it's trying its best, and my humble apologies for the graphics, to show you that there are basically two different types of accounts. There's a taxable account, and then there's what the IRS calls tax qualified. Retirement accounts are only one type of tax qualified. There are health savings accounts and medical savings accounts and educational savings accounts, but they're very similar. They have different provisions, but very similar. If you have a taxable account, also called a regular account, there are no limits on your contributions. You can put as much money into it as possible. There's no limit on your investment types. And you pay taxes every year on rent, on interest, on dividends, on capital gains. Right. And this is what you set up, even though you probably didn't know it, when you went to the bank. You set up a regular account. Unless you told the bank otherwise, they opened a regular account for you, a taxable account. And notice that we can have any type of investment. This is supposed to be like a bin or a basket. I know. Doesn't look that way, but that's what it's supposed to be. And we can place anything in there. Now notice I crossed off the things that you don't want because they're too darn dangerous. And if you don't believe me, take BUS121 and we'll scare the living pants off of you, because these things can lose money faster than you can imagine. But the major assets classes, which we discussed already, stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, mutual funds, they're what you're going to put in there. Now, in the retirement account world, the 401ks, the 403bs, the IRAs, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, you have strict limitations on your contributions, which we'll take a look at in the next few slides. You also have strict limits on the investment types. For example, they only want to see stocks, bonds, short-term investments, cash, savings accounts, certificates of deposits, and mutual funds. Now, there's a couple of exceptions, which we'll discuss later on, but those are the main investment options. Folks, stocks are risky enough. You don't want to be doing anything more riskier in your retirement account. And the IRS, the Congress sets the rules. The Congress doesn't want you doing it either, so they're going to limit your investment types. And then, as we said, your taxes are either deferred, which means you pay them later on in retirement, or in the case of the Roth, they're tax-free. So although there are many subtle and not so subtle differences, the major differences between a regular taxable account and a tax-qualified retirement account is how much money you can contribute, how they are taxed, and what are the investment choices, the options you have available to you. Slide 13, the granddaddy of them all, the individual retirement arrangement. Wait a minute. It used to be, didn't you say it was called an individual retirement account? Well, that's what everybody else calls it. But legally, believe it or not, it's called an individual retirement arrangement. And only the IRS uses that term. Everybody else calls it an individual retirement account. It's the most popular personal retirement plan, and anyone with earned income. Doesn't matter how much you make. People say, "Oh, you can't make too much." No, you can. You can make $1 million or millions of dollars and put $5,500 in. But the confusion occurs whether or not the contributions are tax deductible or not. Normally, you can deduct them off your taxes and get a tax break now. But if you have a retirement plan at your employment, a 401k, a 403b, one of the other simple IRAs or the like, then what happens is you cannot deduct your contribution. You can still make your contribution, you just can't deduct it. And then what happens is you keep track of that amount that was not deductible, because when you go to take it out, you don't want to be taxed twice. So you have to keep track of what the IRS calls your basis, which I think is a silly name, but you keep track of how much was already taxed so you don't get taxed twice. It's not that hard to do, but people do get tripped up over it. The contribution limits increase with time, and we see that in 2018 it's still $5,500. Starting in 2019, it'll rise to $6,000, with an extra $1,000 if you are 50 or over. Your investments grow tax deferred, and you pay taxes on the money as you withdraw it once you are retired. Normally, although there's exceptions, normally this is 59.5. But you can actually retire earlier. You make a deal with the IRS that you'll retire earlier. But at age 70.5, then you must start taking it out. And this is one of the things that Senator Roth was not happy about. He was in his 70s in the Senate, still working, and having to take money out of his IRA, even though he was still working. And he made sure that the Roth IRA did not have that provision. You do not have to take your money out of a Roth IRA until you're ready to take it out. Thank you very much, Senator Roth. Slide number 14. And the IRA's many cousins and siblings, the 401k, the 403b, the 457, the 401a, the whatever, there's another one, I can't remember the number of it. But the TSP, that limit, as we asked you to research in Chapter 3, back with taxes, is $18,500, plus an extra $6,000 if you are 50 or over. Think about that. And that's rising with inflation, so next year it goes to $19,000. I mean, think about that, folks. Let's say you're a married couple in your late 20s, and you both have a pretty decent job, and your expenses are not so high. You can live off of one of your salaries, and then take $19,000, $18,500 in 2008, $19,000 in 2019, put the whole thing into a 401k. Do that for 5 years, and you'll never have to put another dime into your retirement accounts. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you would front load your retirement accounts, and assuming the world doesn't end and you invest prudently with an eye toward long-term growth and income, and don't panic when the markets fall, you'll do okay. SEP IRA, the simple IRA for small businesses, self-employed, the simple 401k. These are basically the same as the 401ks and the traditional IRAs. Now, the Roth is a little different. As we said, you don't get a tax break now, but you get a very big tax break in retirement. But there is a cap on how much you can contribute if you make more than a certain amount. Ha 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 ha. There's a back door, there's a loophole that you can drive a truck through, which we'll discuss in a few slides. And then we should put quotes around this. The Roth 401k, the Roth 403b. The limits are the same as the 401k and the 403b. The IRS does not call them the Roth 401k, but that's what we call them. They all work very much like the traditional IRA. Pre-tax contributions, tax-deferred earnings, except for the Roth options where you don't get a tax break now, post-tax, after-tax, but tax-free in retirement. Slide 15. So let's take an example here. You are working at a company that offers a 401k, or maybe you're working for a school district or a hospital that offers a 403b, and you contribute to your paycheck $100. Now, we didn't discuss the match. We made reference to it, but not so much in the 403b world. But in the 401k world, your employer is going to give you $50 or maybe $100, up to a certain amount, in which case they won't contribute after that. But what a deal! 50% return on your money in one day? Or 100% return on your money in one day? Who's going to give you that? Nobody in the investment world. But your employer will. Now, why does your employer do that? Well, two things. They want to recruit and retain good employees, because without the employees, the company's sunk, right? Plus, they don't want to be dealing with you in your old age. They want you to fly away and deal with it yourself. And again, as we mentioned, if you do this right, you have the opportunity to have a very comfortable retirement and do better than anything those defined benefit plans can do for you. But if you don't do it right, ooh, I don't want to think about it. So anyway, you're in the 25% tax bracket. Let's say you are, for an example here. And you're in the 8% California bracket. That means the governments, the federal governments, Uncle Sam, and the California government, Uncle Cal, are going to give you a $33 tax subsidy. Now, they don't send you a check for $33. What they do is they just reduce your take-home pay by only $67. They take 33 fewer dollars out of your paycheck. You pay less taxes. You pay fewer tax dollars. What a deal! You only see $67 come out of your paycheck, but the whole $100 goes in your account. Plus, you may even get a $50 or $100 match, and that money is yours. Okay, what's the catch? There's always a catch, right? Slide 16. You pay income taxes on any amounts withdrawn in retirement. You are tax deferring your income. But in general, people in retirement are usually in a lower tax bracket. If you're not, congratulations. That means you're taking a ton of money out of your retirement accounts. And you know what? I wish that upon all my students, my clients, myself, that we are in our golden years and have the terrible problem of taking too much money out of our retirement accounts. It's a champagne problem. Oh my goodness, we have too much champagne. What shall we ever do? Now, what's going to happen if you withdraw the money before retirement? They're going to slap your wrist. You're going to pay the income tax, and in general, you're going to have to pay a 10% penalty. But there are exceptions. First-time home purchase, higher education, medical disability, financial hardship. You still have to pay the income tax. Well, that makes sense. You didn't pay it going in. They pay it on the way out. But you don't have to pay the 10% penalty, which is why you don't want to cash out your 401k if you lose your job. Some people, they may have to, but you're going to get taxed and hit with a 10% penalty. So it's going to be a whole lot less than you think it is. You with me? Right. So hang on to your 401ks. This is money that you give a little kiss, send it on its way, and 20, 30, 40 years later, it comes back to you, and it's a lot bigger when it comes back to you. Assuming you didn't panic when the markets fall, you invested prudently and wisely. Yes. Slide 17. Now, what about the Roth option, the Roth IRA, the Roth 401k, the Roth 403b? Well, the Roth IRA does not give you a tax break now. What do the feds give you for putting money into a Roth? What does the state of California give you? Nothing. There's no subsidy. So you see your disposable income reduced by $100. And so you may ask, why contribute to a Roth IRA? Because you're going to contribute to a Roth IRA. Why? Because I said so. And it's a golden opportunity, in my humble opinion. And your friends and family are going to say, well, why do you contribute to a Roth IRA? Well, here's your answer. Get ready. Slide number 18. Because a Roth IRA is so cool. Yes, dear students, especially if you're younger, tax-free in retirement is a golden opportunity. You know, comparing apples to apples, and you can always come up with situations where it doesn't work out, but no other investment choice comes close. I think they're going to get rid of these things. In about 10, 15 years, the feds are going to be, oh my goodness, what did we do? And they won't stop you from keeping your Roth IRA, but they'll just say no more Roth IRA contribution. I don't know, but we'll see. Because there's going to be billions and billions of dollars that the feds and the other politicians can't get their hands on. Plus, you can withdraw the contributions at any time with no penalty because you already paid taxes on the contributions. So those contributions are yours. You put money into a Roth IRA. If you take it out before retirement, the IRS says the first thing that comes out are your contributions, and they are not taxable because you already paid taxes on the way in. This makes the Roth IRA also an excellent intermediate term investment account. If you want to save for a house or other high-ticket item, great for college expenses. Why? Because they are not currently used in financial aid calculations. When you filled out your FAFSA form, not the FAFSA, because that's what people call it, but it's the FAFSA form, did they ask you how much was in your Roth IRA or your folks' Roth IRA? No. And that's not true of private institutions. Often private universities will ask you what's in the Roth IRA, and they expect you to pull it out because they consider it liquid, at least the contributions. Now, there are some people who say, don't trust the politicians, don't trust them, because remember, they believe that what's going to happen in 10, 15 or more years, they're going to come back and say, remember what we said about that tax-free and retirement? That's just a joke. I don't think that's going to happen because older people vote, plus they have canes. But you never know, right? You just never know. But how can you worry about that, in my humble opinion? What they might do is they might say, look, if you are pulling out so much money that you're doing fine, maybe we'll tax some of it. I don't know. But I'm not counting on that to happen. I like the Roth IRA. Slide 19. Okay, here's where it starts to get weird. The Roth IRA is not for everyone. That's what we're supposed to tell you. We're supposed to say that, oh, no. The Roth IRA is not for everyone. Yes, it is. You just have to learn how to navigate the paperwork or find somebody who can do it for you, because it's not that hard. It's just bizarre. There are limitations on Roth IRA contributions. Currently, in 2018, if you have an adjusted gross income of $120,000 and you're single, or $189,000 and you're married, then you can fully contribute to the Roth IRA. And notice that they're rising with inflation. If you don't qualify, congratulations, you're not doing too badly. But still, you can contribute to the Roth IRA anyway. Huh? Well, how do you know how much you're going to make until the end of the year, right? Maybe even not even then. If you find that you made over the limit, you can recharacterize. That's the verb that the IRS uses. You can recharacterize the contributions into the traditional IRA, which does not have the same limitations, before you file your taxes. And then you convert the traditional IRA immediately, on the same day. I've done it for people. You convert the traditional IRA back into the Roth. You understand what? I know you didn't follow me, did you? Just try it again. You put money into a Roth IRA, and then you find, or you knew beforehand, that you're not going to qualify. So then you are able to recharacterize the contributions into a traditional IRA before you file your taxes. And then you immediately convert the traditional IRA back into a Roth. I know. Who voted for these bozos? Oh, yeah. We did. I wish they would fix that, but I don't know. The Republic rats and the demagogues can't seem to play nice in the sandbox. And whose fault is that? In a democracy, The government is a reflection of the people. So when we point our fingers at the Congress, we're actually pointing our fingers at ourselves, and people don't want to hear that. They actually get angry when you point that out. But it's the truth, dear students, dear fellow citizens of the United Snakes of Armenia. Watch out. Mr. Putin would like us to keep yelling and screaming and hollering at one another. He'd be so happy if we started shooting at one another. He'd be just pleased as punch. Slide number 20. Tax credit for low-income earners. Now, this is very cool. And I don't know about you, but $63,000, is that low for a married couple? I don't think that's low at all. But $31,500 for a single filer, $47,250 for a head of household. Notice they go up with inflation. You could get up to 50% of your contribution. So say you put $600, that's $50 a month, into a Roth IRA. You might wind up getting $300 back in taxes. So don't forget this, especially if you do your own taxes. If you have someone do your taxes for you, make sure you remind them that you put money in a 401k or a Roth IRA, because, if they don't know, they're not going to be able to take advantage of it. And if you don't take advantage of it, is the IRS going to call you up and say, "Hey, Fred, we saw that you put money in a Roth IRA. You're eligible for it." They're not going to do that. So you have to keep on top of that. Slide 21, the Roth option for 401ks and 403bs. Again, as we've said, we put it in quotes because that's not what the IRS calls it. The IRS just calls it a 401k or 403b with after-tax, post-tax dollars. The contributions, unlike a Roth IRA, are not allowed to be taken out without taxes or penalties. So I'm a big fan of the Roth IRA. First, max out your Roth IRA, but there's a caveat here. If your company matches your contributions, oh my goodness, the 401k is the winner, right? Because that's 50%, 100% return on your money. But here's the problem. You have to keep track of how much is after tax. You have to keep track of how much is pre-tax. Because when you go to take it out, if you don't, the IRS will say, pay taxes on all of it. Which is not what you want to do, dear students. You've already paid the taxes on the Roth contributions. So you have to keep track of that. And as we said, that's called your cost basis. Keep the end of year statements forever. Now, supposedly, most reputable companies keep them online forever, but I don't trust them. Print it out, put it with your taxes, and hang on to it. Or, save it as a PDF on your system. Cool? Yeah. If you're in the lower tax brackets, a Roth 401k is actually a very cool option. But I tell people to max out the Roth IRA first. What I did, and again, everyone's different, is with our 403b, I put my contributions in pre-tax. So we got a tax break now, my wife and I. And then my wife and I both have Roth IRA. So we have both. We have a Roth IRA, each of us, with after-tax dollars, and we have a 403b with pre-tax dollars. That's the way it worked for me. You decide. Slide 22. Now, this is from the Social Security Administration, and you have to nose around because another part of their website has a different data. So I think this is more. I think this one is more reliable, because look at what Social Security was meant to be, folks. It wasn't meant to be your sole source of income. And people tend to hobble together various sources of income in their retirement. Notice some people use the home equity, the reverse mortgage. Some people work part-time. What's happening, as we'll see in our next presentation, is that many people are just retiring and then going back to work because they're bored, or they need more money, or my wife says when I retire, she's going to go get a full-time job. Because but still, it's a hodgepodge. Don't depend on Social Security as your sole source. And if we invest, have I said this already? I think I have. Prudently, consistently, with an eye toward long-term growth and income. Don't panic when the markets fall. Don't get greedy when the next big thing comes along. And and the world doesn't end, a very important caveat, you should do very, very well, dear students. Let's see. Now, when we come back, we're going to discuss a burning topic, the baby boom generational time bomb. Sounds pretty scary, doesn't it? Actually, no, it's not. It's happening now, and so far, it's not the disaster people had predicted for a couple of decades. But there are serious issues that we need to deal with, and let's hope we do. See you in our next presentation, dear students. Thank you for being in our class.